What secret were you and your partner both hiding from each other? When Danny and I got married, we each walked into that marriage carrying one lie. Mine was simple. I cannot cook. Not, I burn the toast sometimes, can't cook. I mean genuinely dangerous in a kitchen. The kind of person who once set off a smoke alarm making cereal. Don't ask. The problem was that on our third date, I told Danny I'd cook dinner, panicked, and drove to this tiny hole-in-the-wall place called Rosa's. 6 tables, 1 grandmother in the back, the best chicken parm in the city. I bought a tray, drove home, scooped it into my own dish, and buried the container at the bottom of the trash under a layer of paper towels. Danny took one bite, closed their eyes, and said, "I'm gonna marry you someday." I laughed. I also never told the truth, so I kept going. Every single home-cooked meal for the next 2 years came from Rosa. I had a whole system. I'd text ahead, swing by after work, transfer everything into my own pot so the pans looked used, then run the faucet like I'd been scrubbing for an hour. I even learned to describe the recipe. Oh, the trick is fresh basil right at the end. I'd repeat things Rosa told me at the counter, like they were my own little secrets. Danny bragged to everyone we knew. Danny's mother started calling me the one who finally taught her kid what real food tastes like. I smiled through every dinner party and quietly died inside. What I did not know, what I could not have known, was that Danny had a secret too. Danny couldn't cook either, not one bit. On our 4th date, when I mentioned offhand that I loved a good breakfast, Danny had panicked in the exact same way I had and started secretly buying food, plating it at home, and passing it off. The famous weekend pancakes I fell in love with, a diner 3 blocks over. The soup Danny made from scratch the week I had the flu, bought. We had built an entire marriage out of 2 people pretending to cook, lovingly feeding each other food neither of us had ever once made. And the near misses. God, the near misses. There was the time Danny's sister B opened our freezer looking for ice and found it stacked wall to wall with labeled takeout containers. I froze. Danny froze faster, slammed the door shut, and announced that we meal prep every Sunday. B was impressed. I nearly passed out against the counter. Then there was the dinner party. 12 people, our apartment, and both of us had promised to cook together. We stood in that kitchen at 4 in the afternoon staring at each other like 2 hostages. I said I'd handle the mains. Danny said they'd handle the sides. We both got in our cars, drove in opposite directions, came back with bags, and spent 40 frantic minutes replating everything while the first guests knocked. That night, the whole table called us the perfect team. We toasted to cooking together. Neither of us could make eye contact. The closest call came when Rosa's grandson delivered a catering order to our building by mistake and left it right at our door with a handwritten note. "Thanks for being our best regular. See you Thursday." I got to it 3 seconds before Danny did, shoved it under my coat, and mumbled that it was a package for work. Danny nodded slowly. Danny, I realize now, was probably sweating for reasons that had nothing to do with me. For 2 years, it worked. 2 years of mutual, devoted fraud. We were each so busy hiding our own kitchen that it never once occurred to either of us to question the others. Why would it? Each of us thought we'd married a genuinely incredible cook. Each of us walked around feeling like the only imposter at our own dinner table, guilty and amazed and completely, hopelessly in love. Then came our first anniversary. I wanted to do something real for once, so I decided I'd go straight to Rosa, in person, and ask her to make the exact meal from our 3rd date, the chicken parm that started the whole thing. I'd surprise Danny with it, light some candles, maybe finally confess everything over dessert. I told Danny I had a late meeting and slipped out the door. I walked into Rosa's, and there, standing at the counter with their back to me, holding a paper bag and mid-sentence with Rosa herself, was my husband. Danny turned around very slowly. We just stared at each other. 2 bags, same restaurant, same little grandmother behind the counter watching us both like she'd been waiting years for this exact moment. And Rosa, who had somehow been feeding the 2 of us separately this entire time without either of us ever knowing, put her hands on her hips, looked back and forth between us, and said, "Wait, you 2 are married to each other?"